Lewis Mokler, thank you for being here.
That's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're going to have a formal podcast conversation, which will basically just be the conversation we have on the phone every 3 months. But it's a bit of a weird one because I want to take this conversation today to a place that I think most people wouldn't. But I think it's, as we were just saying before we started recording, it's a conversation that I think needs to be had because through you and a few other musicians I know, you all seem to be in the same mindset right now and in the same boat. And yet publicly, lots of people aren't speaking about it. But before we get into that, let's start here, right? You've been in the music game for a bloody long time. It was about 10 years ago exactly that you and I sat on a bench in Leicester when I interviewed you for Magnate, and there was a packed out room of fans in there. And that feels like a lifetime ago. But even 10 years ago, isn't the beginning of the story. So bring me up to speed. Where did this all begin?
Oh my Lord. So, let's talk about how we got to 10 years ago. Started off just being super interested in music when I was really, really young. I'd do like karaoke nights and stuff to stay up with my family because we were in like a pub or whatever, and they'd only let me stay in if I would sing. But I didn't think it could ever be like a job or anything like that. I just thought, oh, this is something I'm good at the weekends. Didn't mention it to anyone at school because it was embarrassing. You know, the fear of getting taken the mickey out of was more scary than actually the fear of going on stage and singing to a room full of strangers. So I just didn't do it. I just played football, and that was my career path, is that I was going to be a football player, and that was set out for me by my family and things like that. And one day when I was 16, my teacher basically not blackmailed me, because I don't want to get in trouble, but like blackmailed me to be in a school play, because she said, you know, you need to do it because otherwise I'm gonna make it hard or whatever. I don't know, but whatever teachers do to motivate you to be in school plays, she did that, and I had no interest in doing it, but somehow I ended up in it. And it came to the singing auditions for the part that I was meant to do, and she said, don't worry about singing, like, you're just here to be the class clown character. And I said, you know what, I reckon I'll give my singing parts a go if that's all right. And I sang, and then my teacher stopped me singing it like 2 seconds into it and was like, what the hell? And so did all of my classmates. So I don't know what happened, but suddenly it gave me a confidence to do it. And then I started busking, and I started learning how to play guitar, and I started doing all these things where I had this newfound confidence. Obviously, time had progressed since then, so it was quite cool to be a singer in school and not get bullied for it and things like that. So, yeah, I sort of progressed. I recently went back to my school and told them this story, and now it's so weird because you go back to a school now, they're very different to when we went to school, and they're very accepting, very like welcoming to anyone who wants to do anything with their lives. And you know, you could say you want to be a goat, and they'd be like, yeah, put it on TikTok, let's do it. So people were accepting. I started playing open mic nights. It just built up from there to get to where we mentioned at the start of this sort of packed out room of complete strangers, and they're all singing songs that I wrote in my bedroom. And that wasn't even this, like, even though that feels like a long journey to get to there, that was like a cut in the cake of what was, you know, this last 10 years.
And so at what point on that kind of slow, gradual, dare I say almost accidental path towards that night when we first met, what was the first moment in all of that when you kind of paused and looked around you and were like, shit, this isn't a thing that I'm being kind of forced into doing in front of people now. This is my life. This is a thing that I'm actually going to do forever. When did that happen? Do you have a moment or a memory?
Yeah, I think so. I think I entered a competition before the, you know, record deals and stuff like this. So at the moment I kind of thought that, oh, maybe I can do something with this. Maybe this is just more than, you know, like a funny little hobby or something like that. I entered a band competition, and it was just me and the acoustic guitar, and I won it. and it was called like Berry Sound. It was like a big venue called the Apex, which I'm playing now at September 3rd this year. Go get tickets. Yeah, so we basically, I went there and I won it on my own, and I was like, no one's ever done that before. That's kind of cool. Maybe I should take this a little bit more seriously. And that's when, you know, the sort of DIY tours and things like that came around, and I would just play anywhere that would have me. I would drive there. I was only 17, 18, so I had all the time in the world to like drive to venues, play an open mic night, get the money. There's like £10 fee or whatever, put it in my car for petrol, drive somewhere else. And I think when we played, there was a year that I played, I think it was like 200 shows or something like that in the whole year. And I was like, okay, this is taking up all of my time, so I should probably just do this now. And I think that's probably the moment where I looked back and was like, I don't have time for a normal job, so I guess this is my normal job now.
And at that point, when you kind of accepted that was then your life, what did your ambitions look like? You must have had this kind of distant, imaginary dream at that point of where you want to take it. What did it look like then?
I mean, I remember, I think we're all the same when we're young, aren't we? Like, you aim for the stars. So I was like, I'm going to be bigger than all of the pop stars ever. You know, obviously, I'm from Suffolk, and Ed Sheeran was like a big part of that, where it's like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it, then I'm going to aim for the very top, you know? So the path for me seemed quite clear, that I was going to get a record deal and they were going to make me into a superstar, and that was it. That was how I was going to be. I was going to be in the charts, and that was my life. And in my head, I'd already envisioned it, so it was happening, and then I was working towards it.
You mentioned Ed Sheeran. I know that he has, correct me if I'm wrong, been in touch a few times over the years with words of encouragement. Who else has kind of slid in the DMs on your way up and been like, I'm watching what you're doing, I really like what you're doing? Give us some tea, some DMT.
Some tea. Or so when I was sort of like, obviously Ed is a big impact because of the Suffolk connections, and he obviously shared the album, and when he played Fit for Forest, he put my album like on the Lego blocks and stuff, and we, you know, I did covers and we'd done shows in Norwich and stuff like that. So that was he was always a really big help, and still is like a really good guidance person to, you know, just watch in general. I think he's a great not idol, but like someone you respect, and you like a peer that you like. He's like the older kid in school who did really well, that you're like, I really respect him, and I want to learn from you and soak in all of your wisdom. But tea-wise, I mean, Labyrinth, from the off, when things started picking up, Labyrinth was like, yeah, cool, I want to come to a show. And I was like, wow, you're Labyrinth. And I'd just been to see Labyrinth in like Skegness for like a lad's holiday that I went on. It was like the reunion thing. And I'd just been and saw him play live, and like 2 months later, he was like following me on Twitter and being like, hey, I want to come to a show. So that was cool. Tiny Temper. I don't know why lots of like footballers took quite like a lot of notice early on as well. And maybe it's just the music that I was making, but it definitely resonates with them. I guess maybe because I've got that in my head as well, that mentality of football in my life, that I sort of sought after their affection as well. And they respected that and saw the hustle. And so I had like Raheem Sterling and Daniel Sturridge and Danny Ings and people like that, all really cool football players. And, you know, I'm a big Liverpool fan, so all of those guys played for Liverpool at some stage. So that was cool.
Does the illusion of quote unquote famous people messaging you ever fall away? Like on the 9th DM of someone that you really admire getting in touch and saying, like, the stuff that you do is really cool, do you ever feel any less like an imposter? Or is there this big circle of like, but you're the famous one, not me? Does that make sense? Like, I imagine after a certain while, the illusion of these people being held on a pedestal falls away and you realize they're just people, right?
So maybe I'm just really, really weird, but I've never felt that sort of the levels. I like I said earlier, like I set out with this whole, I'm going to be the biggest superstar in the world, so we're all on the same level no matter what, because one day you're going to say to me, you know, this and this and this, and I'm going to say, you're really great at this, and I guess when you're younger as well, you've got no fear. So like, I just had no fear, and I wanted to tell everyone about all the plans that I had and all the, you know, how I was going to take over the world and stuff. So if anything, I was probably a bit of a little knobhead, where they were like, who's this young kid telling me about his 10-point plan of how he's going to take over the music industry? And, you know, you have to be that kind of, you know, I always had that sort of wanted to share music with them before it was out and things like that. And, you know, that's kind of how I treat everyone. That's the same with yourself. You know, we've known each other for a long time. The way I speak to you about new music is the way I would speak to, you know, Matty from the 1975 about new music, because you're both human and you're both just as receptive to music and just as important for me as a listener. So it's just nice to have different opinions, and that's kind of how I see everyone. I don't know if that's a good thing to do or a bad thing to do, but it's worked for me.
And so let's fast forward a couple of years, because I am sat in sixth form and I get an email from Joe, your manager at the time. And the email is something along the lines of, can you take down this interview that you did with Lewis, the interview we just spoke about when we sat on the bench, because there was a label who were interested in kind of signing you and almost rebranding you to Hunter, as you're now known, right? I don't know if it was that particular deal that went through. I don't know the details, but talk to me about the reality of that period of your life, because I think that's very kind of secretive and shadowy, right? What happens between a label finding an artist and thinking they might have it and that line actually being signed on that contract? What's the middle part?
Just a lot of jumping through hoops, playing shows at secret venues and popping up at open mic nights to, you know, to play for the big dogs in the labels. They all want to see you. They all want to make sure that you're right. They all want to, you know, they all want to throw in their opinion into the hat as such. So you do a lot of, right, well, you're going to go to this place in North London. You're going to play this show. You're going to sing 3 songs. Everyone knows that you're like a secret big deal or whatever. But it's all those little moments and stuff that they forge their opinion of you, and then it might go quiet for a couple of weeks, and then you might be playing your own show, and then suddenly one of the A&Rs comes down because they want to, you know, they want to see you. It definitely, for me, with the whole DIY like way that I did things before the label got involved, I was playing a lot of shows anyway, so they were sort of just hopping on to come and see these shows. A different A&R would come every time and go back with the same resounding opinion of, you know, this kid is raw, very, very, very raw, but there's something about him that can control crowds and, you know, can make people feel good. And that was kind of where it started, and where when me and the label had a chat, it was like, well, this isn't a finished article. This isn't you know, like a finished product, like Ed Sheeran, for instance, where he had his loop pedal and he had his way of doing live shows that was different, and he's ginger and he's, you know, not the usual pop star, and that is his actual thing. Whereas for other people, you have to find that avenue of what you are in that sound. And when they asked me about it, and, you know, after signing the deal, it was a kind of a case of, right, well, what do you want to be? And I, as this young person with so much confidence, was like, what do you mean? I'm great. And they were like, yeah, but you're not. Like, let's hone in and let's make this better than it is now. And that's where the real learning starts, because you have to learn very quickly that you're not, you know, where, I guess, like signing for a football team, if you go to a better team where you used to be the best player suddenly you're in a team of 11 players who are as good as you, if not better. And you have to start learning very quickly that you've got to be in that team and you've got to make stuff happen in that team. Otherwise, they will just find another player who was just as good, who had that same potential.
So in that process, who is selling to who? This is something I've always wondered, right? Because you've got you as the talent who is, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, in demand from a bunch of different labels at a bunch of different levels when you're kind of that fresh new face on the scene. You've then got the label trying to sell to you to have you come to them. You've got you almost implicitly selling to the label to be like, let's actually go through with this, guys. Look, I'm quite good on stage. Like, how is that all working? Is there a weird, like, unspoken dynamic?
I feel like that's it. You've nailed it on the head. I feel like everyone's bluffing to everyone. And yeah, it's kind of like everyone was selling to everyone at that point. It was like, oh, what am I doing? Like, am I going for this option where I know that these guys really wanted me before anyone else, and they want to put the work into me, and they're an independent, well, a smaller side of a big label? Or do I go to the big dogs who are going to give me loads of money, and knowing the little that I did about the labels, but still knowing that you don't get as big as long a chance, or as much of a chance? Like I say, that's like signing for a major deal is like signing for Barcelona or Real Madrid, or going straight to being the director or in a role in a normal job, as opposed to sort of starting out at like senior manager or senior associate or whatever. So it was like a decision, and it was like, all right, well, I want to do this forever. I don't want to do this for 5 minutes. So I'm going to stick to my guns and stick to the gut feeling. And I guess, yeah, so in that sense, they were kind of selling to me the dream of, we'll stick with you. And I was just putting myself out to anyone who would listen, and who would want to give me, an opportunity to do what I wanted to do. And then listen to all of them sort of sell to me why it should be them that I worked with.
How did it feel on that day when you signed that line and you realised that dream of 17-year-old Lewis coming off the stage of that award show had almost been, I don't want to say achieved, because of course lots more comes after this, right? But you'd taken that first official step. It was real. How did that feel?
I'm going to be completely honest. I've never actually said this before, but a little bit anticlimax. Like, and it was an anticlimax. Like it I don't know if anticlimactical is even a word, but it was an anticlimax. And I went to a little bar. Hardly anyone was there. There was no like. Sometimes when you go into the office and there's all champagne and stuff, there wasn't that. It was just an olive bar, and I think they bought me a beer, and I signed this. It was like, here you go, here's your deal, sign it. Bosh. My lawyer was there as well, actually. Signed it. He was like, congratulations, I've got to shoot now. I'll see you. I'll see you soon. And that was it. It was done. So yeah, it was really. Not, and then when I got home, I was like, oh my God, I've just signed a publishing deal. Like, this is it. This is the start. But the actual scenario itself just didn't feel like anything. It didn't feel like it was that big a deal. And then what followed, obviously, all the sessions and stuff like that was obviously quite a big deal.
So I don't want to jump too far ahead, but actually on that, do you find that a lot? Because I have this conversation very often with friends, particularly those who run bigger businesses than mine or are in higher positions, where they achieve these ridiculous things, these things that have always been on their bucket list that 11-year-old them dreamt of. And they do the thing and they look around them and they're like, it's just a Tuesday. Like, I feel entirely indifferent. And I imagine you've had a lot of those big moments, right? From headline shows to the album to even what we just spoke about. How often did you stop and think this is incredible? And actually, how often was it just like, meh, on to the next thing?
Yeah, it was never stop and think, wow, this is incredible. And it's the biggest regret I ever have in sort of my life so far is that I just turned 30 and I've never stopped and looked back. And to actually enjoy any of the moments, I've always been like, cool, we just sold out this place. Where's the next place? We've just got this song. It's just got 1 million streams. When's 10 million streams? It was always, okay, what's next? And maybe that's why it's got to where it has, but at the same time, I'm definitely learning more now to sort of accept the things that are happening and be like, that's great. Wow, I'm really happy. This has happened. That's nice. Like recently as an independent artist, just got added to some Spotify own playlists, editorial playlists. And now that I'm independent and I see how hard it is to get on those playlists, I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like, I should really appreciate this. And in hindsight, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Like, I wish I'd have done that with every single achievement that I have, but I'd have never had any time to do anything else.
So let's talk about the early days of being signed to a label, this dream that almost every musician has at the beginning of their career, which very, very, very few actually realize, right? Statistically, very few musicians get signed. You got to that point, and then I imagine at some point the reality of studio sessions and writing and working and all of this stuff set in. What does a day-to-day life of a newly signed musician look like? And how does it feel to kind of let go of the control that you had had for all of those years in the growth stage of your career up to that point?
Yeah, I think, do you know what? It's kind of like, to put it just in terms of like everyday life and everyone, to make it sort of feel like everyone can, it's just like getting older. Like one day you're at school and you're being told what to do, and the next minute you blink and you're like in a job, you're doing however well you're doing, and suddenly that control that you had over your life in school, where you can go out and play after school and you can do all these things, and whilst you have parents who are sort of guiding you, you still very much have control of what's going to happen in your life. And then suddenly you blink and you suddenly lost that control somewhere. It's kind of like that, where it's like, right, I had all this control doing it independently, got to a point where I was like, amazing, I'm going to get a deal. And then you sort of sign it, and then you wake up and your decisions are being made for you on your behalf. And I guess it's being signed to a label is the most normal structure, like a job that being a musician is, because you've got people who work on your behalf, on your team, who have their stuff together, and are sort of making decisions for you on, like I say, on your behalf, and you sort of get cut out of some things which you would have used to had to do so much work for. There's someone else doing it now, pitching things to playlists and sending you through to blogs and Hype Machine and all this sort of stuff. And there's things that you didn't even know that you needed to do that they're now doing for you. And I guess the day-to-day of it is that you'd wake up and you'd look at your calendar and you'd see that you're booked in with a session that you never could have got before. You go along, you've got to then prove yourself that you're worth, I guess you mentioned earlier about imposter syndrome, like you've got to prove that you're worth being in that room. Some of the people that I worked with were like Grammy-winning writers and producers, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm basically 12. I can't even grow a beard. I'm like fresh from the industry womb. Like I need to prove but that's where that, I guess, everything links that we're speaking about, where that sort of idea from me of everyone's the same, everyone's human. I'm going to go in and write with this Grammy award-winning person like I would write if I was just with my mate from Newmarket, and then you would you just spend all of your time writing music and writing more music, and occasionally there would be a day where you'd go and meet some PR people, you'd maybe get some new clothes, or you'd be on a photo shoot for some blog or something like that, and occasionally you get to play a show, or you go to meetings where they talked about you playing shows. New artists almost exclusively don't play shows until something's happening.
And so in that system, how much do you feel, I can't think of a better phrase here, so I'm just going to throw out there, almost like a spare part, right? You've got the office working around you, you've got the corporation working around you, you've got your schedule telling you where to be, you've got the person in the session who kind of has their system, and you're just kind of sent to these places and sent to these things to be the logo almost. You're like the Hunter logo. You turn up and you do your thing, and then you get told where to be next. At any point did you kind of, I don't want to say regret the decision in the early days, that's not the right word, but almost think like, shit, what have I got myself in for? This is like a real full-time job of being told what to do.
Yeah, being babysat and being like a sort of mummied into, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. But at the time, right, so you've got to remember that musicians, a lot of them are quite young adults or teenagers, late teens, early 20s. And it's no different for me. I was, 19, 20, 21, 22. I just had full faith that what I was doing was going to get me to where I needed to be. So I just completely trusted the process. And, every day, every session that I got put in, I wrote a song. Every day I tried to write a better song. And that was the goal. It was like, right, well, I did this the other day. It's pretty cool. Let's make a better one today. And, meeting all these producers and writers and people like that and wanting to just better myself constantly. And I knew that if I did that the label would be happy with me. And, I was very ambitious and keen to, every song I wrote, I thought was my best ever song, and I'm sure you can vouch for that from, 10 years of being sent demo after demo and that sort of, I think this one's amazing, I think this one's going to be great. That's kind of the mentality you have to have. Otherwise, that's why so many artists don't put an album out or don't put an EP out or don't even put a song out, because they just they crack under that pressure of, well, we're going to put you in a room with Ryan Tedder or someone who that's a lot of pressure.
You said something interesting there. You said that you were confident that every action you were taking was moving you closer towards your goal of success. Now, whether or not you hit all of your goals, I don't know, but how much do you think that you were in control of your own success, right? To speak to the point you just made of all of the demos that you sent. I was trying to find one earlier, actually, that take another shot, banger. Couldn't find it.
Yeah.
There are so many songs that you made.
Called This Is On Me.
That's what it's called. I couldn't find it in Dropbox. I couldn't think of the name. There are so many songs that you made that you were confident were the best song you had ever written, right? But by virtue of the fact that you had a publishing deal, you were told you can't publish them, right? There were so many, for example, even the tour a few years ago, they got delayed and then delayed again from, I imagine, management. How much do you think that your hands were tied by almost like spreadsheets and people in an office somewhere who were convinced that they knew better? And do you think that while signed to the label, you ever got to show your true potential, or were all of those decisions taken out of your hands?
So that's a loaded question. Yes, I do think that I was right. So it works two ways, right? I think that I was in control of my own destiny, but at the same time, that destiny was being steered by, or not control. I was in control. However, for me to reach any potential, it had to go through and jump over many hurdles. So if I'd have been, or if I am, as if I could have been as successful as Ed Sheeran or Justin Bieber or someone like that, I would have had to have done better in my, I guess, decision making and my drive and sticking to my guns. Because what happens when you're with a label is they obviously have to earn their money by telling you no and by telling you yes and by telling you, we want to do this, we want to do that, this doesn't sound right, can you make this sound more like burning plastic on a summer's day, can you make this, they have to have their opinions, because otherwise I could just do this on my own. So there's a naivety when you're young that they have your best interests at heart and they have the same goals as you and you're the only person that matters to them in the world, that's not real, because they have a record label where there's lots of artists on a roster and they care about all of them because they all make them money, and that's what makes the world go round. And the hard thing to establish with that is when you're younger is that it's not all about you, and they don't care just about your project. And, you know, they're not going to answer the phone at 5 a.m. because you think you've just written the best song in the world. That's something I found hard to accept, not because I'm an idiot, but because I was so in that world of, oh, well, I'm going to be a pop star because I just signed a publishing deal. Now I've just signed a record deal. And, you know, why wouldn't they want to hear the song that I just wrote at 5 a.m.? It's a very fuzzy line about who's in control there, right? Because if I've got the power to text my CEO of my label at 5 a.m., am I in control? Or has he got the control because he can ignore it? And he can be like, don't text me at 5 a.m. if it isn't important, you know? So it's like I said, it's a loaded question because I don't think I was ever in control of anything. But at the same time, I was steering my own ship with the songs I was writing and with the work ethic I had, and with, you know, I have written over 1,000, maybe 2,000. I don't know, however many songs I've written. That doesn't, you know, that's hard. That's a lot of stuff going on, and that's a lot of brain power and things like that.
How does it feel when those two opposing interests collide? Because, like you say, you've sent me over the years a lot of songs, and many of them are very personal. They're about like dark moments of your life or deeply intricate thoughts that you could only really get out via music. And I imagine at some point someone sits in an office somewhere and they listen to it and they say, yeah, no, it's not the one. Yeah, no, it's not very good. It's not going to work. And, you know, just bin it off. Like, how does that feel? Because in my life, I've never experienced A, having to be so emotionally raw about something, but then B, that raw emotion being objectively looked at through the lens of like, is this good for business? Is your emotion here good for business? How does that feel?
Yeah, is your heartbreak gonna make me money or not? Like, even now with Spotify and the way things have progressed, like the curators are like basically God to these independent musicians. It's like they literally have the chance to listen to 15 seconds of a song and they go, yeah, actually, no, don't like it. Where there might be, you know, in the 20th second, the most amazing bit of music ever, but it's just so, as you say, like someone's judging your whole someone might have spent, you know, years writing a song and it only takes 10 seconds for it to get disregarded by, you know, just another human.
Do you think the average listener realizes how not in control they are of what they hear, if that makes sense? Because there are so many layers that a song has to trickle down through, from like the moment it's recorded to how it arrives on your Discover Weekly playlist. There are so many humans involved who at any point can say, no, Sean isn't hearing this song this week. Do you think, because we think that music is this organic discovery, and yet I just have beef with industry events because I think they expose what I'm about to say, which is that it's actually just this kind of massive kind of in-group of people who either say yes or no. And there are so many people who can stop a song from ever reaching Spotify. And I don't think people think that. People think that this kind of organic discovery happens and, wow, I've just discovered a new artist. But you click into their song credits and you see they're signed to like a major label and they've got this person as a manager. It's almost like this closed group. And if you're in, you're in. And if you're out, you've got no chance.
You're in the cold. Yeah. It's I just don't think people know that. And I don't think anyone will ever know that unless you experience it, or you've got a friend who experiences it, or you're suddenly become obsessed with an artist who is talking about it. And that's the only way you sort of realize, you know, you're a big fan of music. You go to a lot of shows, you know. For everyone who listens to this, I'm sure they're aware that you're very passionate about, you know, independent and also signed artists. And you've been fortunate enough to go and watch a load of them live, and I'm sure that I'm not the only person, as you mentioned, who speaks about these types of things and speaks about how, there's gatekeepers in Spotify, there's gatekeepers in labels, there's gatekeepers in life, right? So even down to now playing shows, it's difficult to sell tickets to shows because how do you promote it when there's so many social medias and so many platforms that use algorithms? So how do you even speak to your own fans anymore? Because you've got to somehow trick the system to speak to the people who have followed you for years. It just doesn't, none of it makes sense to me.
And this is something that, and again, the reason I wanted to have this conversation is I saw you speaking about this at the same time as I saw a bunch of other musicians at every level talking about this. It's almost like there's been this tidal wave that's been held back for years. And some of it is almost like stage managed, right? You see people do TikToks where they're like, oh, my label said I can't release this song, so I'm going to play it. And that's one thing. But putting that to one side, which is like a trend within this trend, it does seem to me that more and more musicians are just fed up with having to be 7 different things at once, or fed up with existing within a system where they have to justify their existence every single time they put out a song. Forgetting the label for a second, now as an independent, how does that feel where you have to fight so hard to have your fans hear your music that they want to hear?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. It's fighting. You actually have to genuinely fight. You have to be a web designer, you have to be, a social media influencer, you have to be a graphic designer, you have to be, all these things to tell someone that you've got a song coming out. That's not even backing that they're gonna, that's nothing to do with them actually listening to the song and enjoying it themselves. It's about trying to get them to even be able to listen to it, which is so hard. And it's like, they've got something stupid like 100,000 Facebook likes, and about 6 people like some of the posts in the first hour or whatever, because I have to, if I want my own fans to see my own music, I have to pay, Facebook 30 quid or something like that just to push it to my own fans. That's not new fans. That's not trying to build an audience. That's just people that already like my music that don't see it and disregard knowing me as an artist anymore because they don't see any. They think that I'm dead, probably, and they haven't got time to look me up because no one has time anymore. No one has. I don't know what happened to us, but no one seems to have time. There's so many artists. The world's so saturated. The world we're too busy flicking TikTok. We don't have time to listen to music anymore. I spoke to my friend. Sorry, this is me being very passionate, but I spoke to my friend Dan Briskin, who I made the second album with. He was saying to me, songs are going to be 15 seconds long soon because they just need to be the TikTok sound and need to draw people in. So if he had any 15-second parts of songs that he thought would be really good for TikTok, to send it over. And I just thought to myself, I was just sort of, what are we doing? What are we doing with our life? Why are we trying to fit in? Why are we trying to shoehorn ourselves and our music and, artists, whether that be artists who are new, old, independent? Why are we all on TikTok pretending that we are enjoying it? Because we're not. Everyone's not enjoying it. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not enjoying being all of these different people. All I want to do is make music and have people sit, like you said before, sing back my songs to me in shows. That was what being a musician used to be, and that's the core of my existence, was to make songs that people felt something to, and would message me and be like, your song did this to me, I play your song while I'm doing this, or me and my best friend like to drive to this song, or things like that. That's what I do music for. I don't do music to be famous anymore or to do any, there's no motive behind. I don't even care about money or anything like that. I'm now just doing it because I love it. So I don't like all the background jobs that you have to do just for. I wouldn't mind if, I never got another fan again, what pains me is that my own fans that have put the time and effort into me and invested into me as an artist over the last 10 years can't see when I'm putting out a new song.
And how does it feel when you ruminate on that realization? Because in the interest of fairness, I won't name people who I've had to Google to check that they're, to put it, as you put it, still alive, right? But there are musicians who I've kind of liked in the background, but not been a super fan of. And then I'll have a conversation with, say, Chloe, and I'll be like, oh, they definitely fell off. And then I'll look, and they're still working just as hard. They're still releasing music. But for all of the reasons you just said, it's just not getting through to me. Does it panic you that these people that you spent over a decade of your life forming a connection with now literally don't know you exist in some cases?
Yeah. Yeah. To answer it bluntly, yeah, of course. But it's super worrying, and it's, you think to yourself, all right, I can't go on if more and more people can't see me. If I start, you feel like you're becoming like the invisible man or the invisible woman. It's hard enough as it is to do all the stuff we've talked about for the last 45 minutes to get yourself to that stage, to get yourself to even have the courage to write a song, to even then to get it through production, to mix it, to do all these jobs, to get it to making artwork. Like, I make my own artwork now. I never thought I'd do that, but I do it because I want to, because I'm in control of it. But doing all of those things, getting to that point is exhausting, and then to then put it out and for no one to hear it, or for a limited amount of people to hear it, or for not the same amount of people that you used to have when you were with your label, because the label was spending loads of PR budget sharing it around. And the way that the industry has gone, and the way that social media has gone, that everything is monetized now and everything is paid for, and ads, you need ads to reach your own fans. Like, it's just scary. It's terrifying, because where do we go from here? Like, there needs to be a change. Otherwise, all the hard work that's been done by all these musicians, they're just going to disappear, and then there'll be no music to listen to. Only the things that you're sort of forced to listen to, and it'll be like the 80s and 70s again, where there'll only be a certain amount of songs out a week and stuff.
There's an interesting broken full circle as I think about it, right? So if we go back to when you first started releasing music as HUNTAR on the label, I don't know the full story, so I'm sure you fill in the gaps, but you released your first few songs without a face, right? The artwork was kind of designed in such a way where nobody really knew that HUNTAR was Lewis Mokler and Lewis Mokler was HUNTAR. And that was spun in such a way to be all about the music, right? You either like the music or you don't, and then you can buy into the personality afterwards. We're now in a position as a society where music is just as faceless, but for the completely wrong reason, right? Music is now, as you put it, a 15-second background track who could be by anybody, because there is no loyalty to whatever song's viral on TikTok this week, because you don't connect with the human behind it. It's like we've come full circle by virtue of your career to a point where you started off faceless, but for the right reasons, and now the whole bloody world of music is faceless for the entirely wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And when I started HUNTAR, I just didn't want a head start. I didn't want all the fans from Lewis Mokler to jump on board and just like it because it was me. So I wanted to test out this music that I'd been, these skills, this sort of R&B pop sound that I'd been making that I loved. I wanted whoever liked it to like it. And whoever didn't like it didn't have to, jump on board just because it was me. And then, to follow on from that, now the world is, like I say, no one has any loyalty with anything. And these 15 seconds, it says the artist on the sound. And I wonder how many people, if I said to you, hear that, that guy who sings that's Tom Rosenthal, but I only know that because I follow him and I have done for ages. He's an incredible writer, so I'm watching his TikTok lottery song, do the lottery and come up trumps, but his followers aren't going up dramatically. he's like making a fortune because the song's streaming really well because people are going to find the song. But him as an artist, I don't think he's suddenly selling out, venues twice the size or anything like that. He's just really chill about how lucky he is that a song blew up on TikTok to that extent. Because you can have little mini ripples with TikTok and Instagram and stuff where people find the sound and then they stream the song. Or you can have big ones like him where, some songs just on TikTok just explode. And I mean, like, explode. And that is the one benefit of that. But it's so, like you say, it's so faceless. Like, people aren't going in the street to him like, oh, you're that guy who's like, oh, what the... They're not doing that to him because they don't know who the hell he is. Basically, they don't know anything about him. They just know that if he went round though to everyone in the world and was like, I'm the guy from TikTok who does, they'd be like, oh my. If he started going, they'd be like, I know you. I feel like I've really used that sound. I feel like maybe I'm going to be a TikTok viral thing just for this interview with that impression.
I don't use TikTok, so I actually don't know what the hell that sound is. I'm just going along with it.
It's that one, it's like a cover, and he actually, funny enough, made that song that went viral was not on Tom Rosenthal's actual page. He made like a pseudonym of like, I can't remember what it was called, but it's almost like a female artist that he'd made up where he's singing it. And it's a cover of that Alabama, Arkansas, but it's him just doing like a really nice sort of easy breezy, amazing version of it. It's so beautiful, and he's really great. And he's had 1 or 2 songs now that have actually gone super viral on TikTok, and like, where maybe the industry might not be interested or might not have been interested in him, that I bet they really are now. And he was maybe an artist that was told to go and be a writer. So that's what can come from this, and that's amazing. And if someone gets an opportunity from these new ways of how things become viral and these new sort of throwaway songs where no one knows who the artist is but they know the song, great. But I just don't like it.
Do you think, so a lot of people in the industry, from managers to musicians to everything in between, and you've also sat in the industry for a long time yourself, you've seen some of the changes, right? Do you think that the industry, based on what you just said about Dan, do you think that the industry is aiming for the wrong North Star here? They're aiming to make viral songs to a fan base that will move on in 7 minutes because the entire design of TikTok is there to have you move on quickly, rather than trying to nourish the kind of songwriters and the kind of musicians that perhaps you or I grew up with? Do you think that this entire generation is destined to have kind of catchy pop songs and nothing else? Or is there still space for real music to break through somewhere, somehow?
I think we'll be the last generation of it. I honestly, I think there'll be space for people like Adele and like Ed Sheeran and like, there'll be people like that that will stay true to themselves. There'll be people that still make albums, and there'll be people that still believe in the craft, and there'll be an audience for that too. And there'll be young kids whose parents are like, no, you should listen to a whole album. Like, there'll still be that world. And Adele actually spoke about this recently. She was like, well, who's writing music for the people who still want albums? I'm happy to volunteer as tribute, So, and I'm the same. I will happily carry on doing things the way that I want to do them, because I believe in that I believe that you can listen to a whole album on a drive, or just before you go to bed, or when you go for a run, or I made the second album all about sitting on a train when it's rainy outside, and you feeling like the whole album is a movie about you. So I will stick to my guns on it. But I do think that, the music industry is following that wrong North Star because it's been pushed into it. I don't actually think that the music industry ever wanted to go away from, doing radio and album signings, but they get pushed and they get bullied into, and then they find where the money is and they follow. It's a rat race. They follow wherever the money goes, and the money is with TikTok right now. The money was with Spotify, and they'll just keep doing that until, they'll always be a little bit in control because they'll always be the people with the money who are following the money.
It's interesting that the gap between those two generations who were born so close together, right? I guess our generation and those 10 to 15 years younger than us, time-wise, that's a grain of sand relative, right? And yet you've got artists like Adele who had the shuffle button taken away from her album on Spotify to encourage you to listen to it in its entirety. You had Ed Sheeran just after that who said, you can do what you want. You can listen to these songs as singles, but I ask you just once, please listen to the full album together before you judge it. And then one generation along, we've got people who don't even know full songs, right? Everyone knows their Day in the Life. Let's see if you really trap. I don't know the rest of that song. I just know the bit that's on Instagram. And it's like, where does that lead us? Where people aren't even writing full songs anymore. I mean, they are, but they're optimizing for such a tiny bit. It's almost like the craft leaves and this turns into pure economics at this point.
Well, so music has always been that way where like it's like write a hit, what's the hook, right? What's the hook? The hook. And that has now evolved where it used to be, there'd be an advert for an album and you'd hear the best bits of, Adele's songs and stuff like that, and it would be all the hooks, the catchy parts of the songs. They've just evolved so much that where the advert wanted to show you 20 seconds of a song, they've just gone, right, TikTok, here we go, bang, 15 seconds, that's it. That's kind of where it's gone, and I hope it doesn't go any further than that, because what we're going to hear, like 5 seconds of a song, it's going to be, for me, that's like a and then it's gone.
So let's end here, right? Because I have dragged this conversation through, I guess, a somewhat dark place, but because, like I said at the beginning, I think it's a conversation that people are too scared to have, that you've been willing to kind of stick your head above the trench and say on Instagram. And so I wanted to dive a bit deeper into it. But of course, the last however many years of your life and your career haven't all been like deep and depressing and contracts and arguments. Lots of it has been good, right? So just in the last few minutes, reflect back on the last 10 plus years and pull out some memories of what were like the most amazing, the happiest, the most incredible moments of this whirlwind so far. What sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I've got 11 minutes left on my laptop, so I'm gonna tell you in 5. And generally the best things that have ever happened to me have all been shows and all been people singing back my own songs. Every time they got bigger and every time it got louder in the crowds, like that was as close to taking a realization of, oh my God, look where we are, look how far we've come. That's how I used to manage my life and how I used to manage how successful I was, of how many shows that people were singing songs back to me, or, if I'd support someone, people already were in the crowd who knew the words. If it was a headline show, they're all singing it back to me. It's crazy. 4 a.m. coming out was like a game-changing moment. Anyway, getting on FIFA was just, I think it's probably one of my biggest achievements because of who I am and who, football and stuff is such a big part of my life. So that was like an amazing achievement, and I'm super proud of that. I guess just doing it all. Like, I'm going to look back when, I've stopped doing music and I'm older and greyer and don't look like a 12-year-old anymore. And I'm going to just think to myself, Christ, I actually did it. Like, I had this life, and by then if I've got kids and stuff and I'm doing something that's normal or whatever, and I can tell them all these stories about, how mental life was and how I built this whole empire for myself and how it grew and how it evolved and how I did all this stuff in my, in my teens, my 20s and 30s, and how it turned out pretty cool. And like, that's something that I'll never be able to, explain or bottle or like write about. Maybe I could write about it and make a little book or something. But that's something that no one else will have, that my situation would never be the same as anyone else's. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And I guess that's the biggest achievement, is that I can say I did that myself. Like, no one helped me.
It's a really nice place to end. Lewis, I've really enjoyed this. I'm going to make sure that your Spotify and whatnot are in the show notes so people can go and get ready for the second album. If people want to head somewhere to check you out, other than to the link to the show, which will be there so people can buy tickets, where can they go to hear more of your stuff?
Just online. If you can see my posts, put me as I think there's a new thing where you can put it as one of your favorites or something like that. That's the new thing apparently, but it's all at Hunter Music, so all of it spelled HUNTAR, like an evil villain. That's me. Muhaha. And yeah, thank you for having me on here, and I really appreciate having a chat and hopefully helping someone out with some anxiety or a dark place, helping them realize that it's not just them.
Amazing. I appreciate it. Thank you.